Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are doing absolutely fine. It is 10 a.m. and we are back once again live for today's session of the Hindu Newspaper Analysis. I hope all of you are doing good. I hope all your preparation is right on track. It is 2023 already. So if you are planning to appear for this year's preliminary examination, I hope you know you do not have a lot of time left. So make sure that your preparation is right on track. And to aid your preparation, we have been bringing a lot of very important initiatives for all of you. Most of them live on here are at our YouTube channel. Today, we will be discussing today's the Hindu newspaper and the most important articles from different parts of the UPSC syllabus from today's paper. Before we go deeper into these articles one by one, just a reminder once again, if for some reason you have still not subscribed to our channel, please do hit the subscribe button. Secondly, as you know, at the end of the session, as soon as the session ends, we have a quiz based on the topics that we have discussed here right on our Telegram channel. So in case you are a part of our Telegram channel, please don't forget to attend that quiz. If you are not a part of our Telegram channel, this is the time that you do check out the link given in the description of the video. Do join the Telegram channel and do attend that quiz so that you can also check your knowledge from this particular session. Now, without any further delay, let's see what are the important topics that we have here for you from today's The Hindu newspaper. The first article that we have taken up is about international law. More specifically, it is about international organizations. Now, this article has been written specifically on the theme that around the world right now, there is no international organization that is able to do its job properly. Now, let me first give you a gist of the article before we go deeper into what specifically does the article say. The author here says that if you look at around the world, there is no particular strong international law that is followed by nations around the world. Whenever you talk about any international organization, whenever you talk about international law, the first thing that comes to our mind is the United Nations, the UN. As you know, the UN came into being after the end of the Second World War. This was when the nations around the world decided to come together and make a promise to each other that we'll make an organization so that the situation like the World War does not come again. Now, let me ask you a very simple question. Do you think UN has been successful or do you think UN has been a failure? Just think of it. It's a one-word answer. What do you think? The UN has been successful in ensuring that the world becomes a better place, or the UN has not been able to fulfill its mandate? Now, I see a lot of people who are saying 50-50, no, not really, UN has not been successful, it has been a failure. Now, there are two ways to answer this question. Let's first say that yes, UN was successful in its very primary aim. What was the aim of the UN? The aim of the UN was that we should never have a third world war. Because the world just had a Second World War, there was devastation all around the world, and the promise was, let's have a body that will ensure that there is no third world war. To that extent, UN has been successful. Because we have not seen the third world war, at least so far, fingers crossed. On the other hand, the other mandate of the US was that the UN decided that war will be illegal throughout the world. The United Nations, the UN had to ensure that no country is subjected to war by any other nation. In that sense, the UN, the United Nations, has not been successful at all. The most recent example is the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia. There have been multiple other wars that have happened after the UN came into being. You can talk about what happened in Afghanistan, what happened in Vietnam. You can talk about civil wars that are still taking place in the African continent. You can talk about the Israel-Palestine conflict. So there have been a number of instances where war has actually taken place and UN has not been that successful. This is where the article says that we are in a crisis mode right now. After the end of the Second World War, we had about 3 decades of relative harmony. Relative harmony means a period where we did not have a lot of conflicts. It was till the 1970s, and this is when the conflict started to rise between the two superpowers. There was conflict in Afghanistan, conflict in Vietnam, so on and so forth. Since then, the world has seen continuously conflicts one after the other in each and every decade. In that sense, the UN has not been that successful. Also, one more important suggestion from my side for the mains examination especially. See, in the mains examination, especially in topics such as international relations, or if you're one of those who have PSIR as your optional subject, you would know that you would get extra marks or you would make a very good impression on the examiner if you quote certain people, certain well-known strategic thinkers. For example, whenever you talk about international relations, the one author that everyone talks about in India is Mr. C. Rajamohan. Mr. C. Rajamohan, who writes a lot of articles in the Indian Express newspaper on international relations. So this phrase that you see, relative harmony, that the world was in relative harmony for 3 decades after the Second World War, this is a phrase used by Mr. C. Rajamohan only. So in the answer, you can very easily write that as per strategic thinker Mr. C. Rajamohan, the world had seen a period of relative harmony of 3 decades. That would give you additional brownie points if you actually quote these kind of people. So make sure that you do try and quote these people in your answers. Now let's come back. For 3 decades after the Second World War, the world did see relative harmony, a period where we did not have a lot of conflicts. However, that did not last long. We now have multiple international organizations, not just the UN. We have the WTO, we have the IMF, we have other organizations that are working for different aspects. We have the WHO. However, none of them can be said to be extremely successful. And there are multiple examples. Let me share with you certain examples so that you can actually understand what do we mean by failure of international organizations. Let's talk about UN. The biggest failure of UN is there is hardly any resolution that gets support of the entire UN Security Council. The entire UN Security Council, as you know, can be actually stopped from its working just by one permanent member using its veto option. In the UN Security Council, we have the misuse of veto that we have seen very, very often from US, from Russia, from China, and from all these nations that want to protect their rights. Not just this, look at WTO. In WTO also, there has hardly been any significant resolution which has seen all the countries coming together. You can talk about the UNFCCC. Whenever it talks about climate change, the world always is divided between the developing and the developed nations. The developed nations want something else, the developing nations want something entirely different. All these examples show how the developed world and the developing world is still not coming together and how the international laws are still not followed. I'll give you 2 important examples here which are written in this article. If you have been following the news in the last few months, you would have seen in the US government passed a very important law. They called the law Inflation Reduction Act, IRA. Did you read about it? Inflation Reduction Act, IRA. What was that? Inflation Reduction Act is a law in the US as per which the US government said that we will spend a lot of money now to transition towards renewable energy. As per the government of the US government said that we will ensure that solar power, solar companies which are making solar panels, etc., electric vehicles, they are given a lot of subsidies. However, they will only be given subsidies if they make their products in the US only. Any product coming in from outside the US will not get that benefit. Now, this kind of goes against the WTO norms because WTO says if any product comes to your country from outside your borders, that also has to be given national treatment. But this has been violated, but because it is the US, no one has any power to say anything to the US. Same is the case with China. China has violated a lot of WTO norms. The reason why China makes such cheap products, the reason why China's products are so low cost is because a lot of trade distorting subsidies are given by the Chinese government to their companies. But again, no one can say anything because these are world power, these are superpowers, and no international organization has the power or has the authority to stop them. That is why there have been multiple of these organizations which are not really working well. Also, I am seeing in the chat a lot of people asking me the question of relative harmony. Relative harmony, the phrase that we just discussed. Harmony means a period where we do not have war. Harmony means a period of peace. Relative means not complete peace, but somewhat situation where we are not leading in a war. 1950s, 1960s was a period where we did have certain conflicts, but it was not really any big conflict that broke out. We did have certain issues in terms of what was happening in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine. We did have certain issues between Koreas, but it was still a period of relative harmony altogether. That is what we mean by relative harmony, a period where we did not have a lot of wars breaking out. Now, internationally, if you see, there are multiple organizations that are actually trying to ensure a world order. They are trying to bring the nations together. However, these organizations cannot enforce their decisions on any of the nations. Let me give you certain examples. We have already discussed how UN has failed time and time again to stop any war from happening. We have seen what is happening in between Ukraine and Russia. Despite the UN passing resolutions after resolutions against Russia, the war has not stopped. Similarly with WTO, the WTO also has been regarded as an organization which has not been able to fulfill its mandate. They have not been able to ensure that the developing nations also get all the trade benefits. There is one other organization as well which has not been able to utilize its full power, that is the ICJ, International Court of Justice. Whenever the International Court of Justice gives any decision, it is very interesting how this court works. See, if you look at the UN Charter says that the responsibility to ensure that the decisions given by the International Court of Justice are followed, that responsibility is with the UN Security Council only. In simple terms, if the International Court of Justice gives a decision, let's say they give a decision against any country, Sri Lanka, Australia, Pakistan, etc. To ensure that that decision is abided by is the responsibility of the UN Security Council. However, whenever any such decision is given against a Security Council member only, let's say when the ICJ gives a judgment against China, when they give a judgment against US, when they give a judgment against Russia, there is almost a 0% chance that that judgment will be abided by. Because these nations will never abide by these judgments, saying that we have the power to do whatever we want. In fact, I want you after the end of the session to tell me in the comment section at least 2 examples of International Court of Justice judgments where the nations did not abide by that. There are multiple such examples that you can actually quote in your answers. Let's see in the comment section if you can give me at least 2 examples of where the International Court of Justice gave a judgment against the permanent members of the Security Council and they did not abide by that. There are a lot of different examples. You can take examples of China, judgments given in terms of the South China Sea. There have been judgments against USA. The US did not abide by that. So you have to tell me at least 2 examples of those in the comment section after the video ends so that you can learn from each other's examples as well. This was the first article that we had. I will take one more question from the chat. There's a question that I have which is, what ICJ, International Court of Justice, can do if Russia doesn't stop the war? See, that is the entire problem that we have. None of the international organizations right now are so empowered or are so powerful that they can actually force a nation to stop a war. The only thing that they can do is pass a resolution against certain nations. UN, in fact, cannot even put any sanctions. Even the sanctions that we talk about, the sanctions that are being imposed on Russia, etc., are imposed by specific nations altogether, not by the UN. There is a lot of demand that the UN Charter should change. unless the UN Charter changes, unless that Charter actually says that it will be binding on the nations to abide by these, we will not have a world where the international organizations are given their due prestige. Now let's come to the second important news from today's Hindu newspaper. The second important news is about the Kuki Chin refugees from Bangladesh. Recently, there was a statement made by a member of parliament from Mizoram saying that the Kuki Chin refugees from Bangladesh who are trying to enter Mizoram are not being allowed to enter Mizoram. In fact, the member of parliament said that the border security force, that is BSF, are pushing back the Kuki Chin refugees, and this is what he doesn't want. Now, let me try and give you a brief background. Sorry. Let me try and give you a brief background about what exactly is the Kuki Chin refugees and what is their issue all about. Now, Kuki Chin refugees are ethnic community that live in Bangladesh. Let me first show you a map so that you can understand this carefully. If you see this map on your screen, the map of Bangladesh, over here the green part that you see here, this area is called CHT. Now what does CHT stands for? CHT here stands for Chittagong Hill Tracts. It is Chittagong Hill Tracts. The CHT area of Bangladesh is one of those areas where they have a lot of tribal population. This tribal population of Bangladesh, although they are Bangladesh citizens, they are very different as compared to their other population, which is of Muslim religion. So, most of Bangladesh population, the majority of them follow Islamic religion, but in this area of CHT, that is the Chittagong Hill Tracts, we have tribal population. A lot of these tribal population have their connections to Myanmar, they have their connections to Indian states also, for example, Tripura, Mizoram, etc. In this area of the CHT, there are multiple tribes. One of those tribes are called the Kuki tribes. So Kuki tribes are tribes that live in this Bangladesh area called the CHT region. Now, they have been demanding that Bangladesh government does not take care of us. Bangladesh government does not really have welfare schemes for us. So we want a new state for us, a new country should be formed. Obviously, no government would want anyone to demand a new country out of it. In India also, whenever you see anyone demanding a new state, anyone demanding a new country, obviously the government of India will not accept that. Similarly, in Bangladesh also, these tribal communities were fighting against the Bangladesh forces themselves, saying that we want a new country altogether for our tribe, and Bangladesh government obviously did not accept that. Now, what has happened is, in the past few years, because these Kuki Chin communities, they have been fighting against Bangladesh, the problem here is, if you are fighting against any government, doesn't matter small country, large country, whatever, if you are fighting against the government, there is a very, very little chance that you can compete against the government forces. See, at the end of the day, the government forces will always have better weapons than you. The government forces will always have more money than you. The government forces will always have a better infrastructure than you. In the short term, these forces or these insurgents may be able to impose or inflict certain damage on the government forces, but in the long run, it is the government forces almost always that win. You can take multiple examples. You can talk about the Naga insurgency in India. The Naga insurgency in 1950s, where the Naga insurgents inflicted a lot of loss and damage on the Indian army. But at the end of the day, it was the Indian army that was able to impose its will. Talk about what happened in Sri Lanka in terms of the civil war. Yes, there were a lot of groups fighting against the Sri Lankan army, the LTT, etc. But at the end of the day, which side came on the top? It was the side supported by the government. There are so many examples around the world where you will see, although the insurgents do start fighting against the government, but at the end of the day, it is the government forces that come on the top. Similar is the case here in Bangladesh, where these tribes, the Kuki Chin tribes, they started fighting against Bangladesh, but they soon realized that they could not match with the power, the force of Bangladesh. So now what did they do? They started running away to save their lives. Now, when these tribes started to run away, where will they go? As I told you, they have a lot of connection with people living in Indian states of Mizoram and Tripura. That is why a lot of people from the Kuki Chin tribes started entering India illegally. Why do I say illegally? Because officially they are citizens of Bangladesh only. Yes, they have a connection with that of the people living in Mizoram, but at the end of the day, we have these people who are Bangladesh citizens. So they started entering India, the Indian state of Mizoram. Now, because the locals in Mizoram are connected to these tribes, they requested the Indian government to allow the Kuki Chin tribes to come back to Mizoram. The Indian government said, okay, we will not stop them from entering. This is the entire issue. This is the entire issue. Let me summarize that once again very quickly for all of you. In Bangladesh, we have this area called CHT, the Chittagong Hill Tracts. Population living in this area is majorly tribal, which is very different as compared to other population of Bangladesh. These people have been demanding a separate country altogether. They have been fighting against the Bangladesh forces. They have their ancient connection, their ethnic connections with India, the Indian state of Mizoram. Because the Bangladeshi forces have been able to pressurize them, these Kuki Chin communities are now trying to enter India so that they can take refuge into India. And those people who are living in Mizoram want that their community should be allowed to enter India, although they are not Indian citizens altogether. Now, the Mizoram Member of Parliament has raised this issue that the government of India is not allowing them to enter. They should allow them to enter. They should ensure that they are given a safe refuge in the state of Mizoram. The government of India said that BSF is not stopping anyone. The BSF is just ensuring that they are actually coming in at the right place. The Mizoram Member of Parliament said that Indian government has done a similar kind of thing earlier as well. Earlier as well, in the 1970s, many people from Bangladesh called the Chakma community, which is the Buddhist community, they were allowed to enter India although they were not Indian citizens. Similarly, the government of India should allow the Kuki Chin refugees also to enter India. Now, there is one more very interesting point of view here. See, there are two very important words that you need to understand. There is a word called refugee and there is a word called migrants. Please try and understand the difference between the two. Refugees and migrants are two very different people. See the difference. Migrants are those who come from one place to the other place in search of better opportunity. Let's assume that you are living in India, you are working right now, there is no issue, but you find a better job in US. You find a better college in US, you go there to study to earn better money. Then you will be called a migrant. So migrant is someone who goes to other country mainly in terms of better economic opportunities, not because your life is in danger. Migrant is someone who goes in because you want better opportunities. Your life is not in danger. Meaning that if you stop a migrant, then there is no one who is harming his or her life. If you are stopping a migrant to come to your country, there is no problem with anyone's life. On the other hand, who is a refugee? Refugee is someone who is coming to the other country because his life was in danger in his country. Because he was under threat, he thought that I will be killed and I want to come to your country to save my life. That is called a refugee. The UN says that if someone is a refugee, then every country has the responsibility to accept that person and not forcefully send them back. The UN says that to accept a refugee has to be the responsibility of the government. Every government should ensure that they don't forcefully send anyone back. This is what India has also done in the past. We have a lot of refugees from Sri Lanka that are of Tamil origin that have been living in India for many decades. Before the Bangladesh war, there were so many refugees that came into India from East Pakistan, that was Bangladesh at that time. They were living in India. Talk about the Rohingyas. We still have so many Rohingyas living in India. We are not forcefully sending them back. Why? Because again, they are refugees. Similarly, with this Kuki Chin community, we are not sending them back because they are refugees. However, the interesting part here is India has not signed the UN Refugee Convention of 1951. So UN has a resolution called the UN Refugee Convention, under which it is mandatory on every country to give shelter to refugees. India has not signed that, please do remember. But still India respects that. Although we have not signed it, we still respect it. We still make sure that if there is a refugee coming into India, we do not stop them. We don't forcefully tell them, no, 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 go back, go back. No, we don't do that. That is why India has a very, very good record of accepting refugees, even though we have not been a signatory to the UN Refugee Convention, and India does not really have its own refugee policy as well. This is the issue, as I told you, with the Kuki Chin community that lives in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, which is an area where most population of Bangladesh is actually tribal origin and not really very similar to the other parts of Bangladesh. This body that is fighting against the Bangladesh forces, they are called the Kuki Chin National Army. So the Kuki Chin community, just like the Naga insurgents, have made their own army as well. This is called the Kuki Chin National Army. They are the ones who have been fighting against Bangladesh Rapid Action Battalion in this particular area. This was the second article that he wanted to discuss. There's a question that I see in the chat. The question is, what is the difference between asylum and refugees? So refugee is a person. When he or she asks for a refuge, that is called asylum. So asylum means permission given to the refugee that, okay, we are allowing you to stay here. Refugee is a person, and that asylum, giving asylum, is a form of permission. Then I have a question, and I would really request you to not repeat your questions. Don't copy paste, because this will just flood the chat. We will see your question even if you type it once. So please don't type it time and time again. We can see it properly. I have one more question. Refugee Convention means what? So UN, the United Nations, had passed a resolution saying that in every country of the UN, every member nation should accept refugees, should not forcefully send them back. There was a resolution for that called the Refugee Convention. India did not sign it. We said that no, 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 we are not promising that we will accept every refugee. But even without signing it, India has a record of accepting any refugee that is coming into India. One last question, then we'll go to the third article. One last question that I have is, why did India not sign this convention? So at that point of time, India was not really happy with the definition of refugees. We wanted a much more clearer definition of the word refugees, and we did not really sign it because we thought that this is not really of our liking. We thought that the developed nations are giving definition of refugees as per their own will. We are happy to give refuge to all the refugees, but we will not sign this agreement. Perfect. Let's move on. The next important news story that we have picked up from, again, the front page of the Hindu newspaper is that the state of Bihar has decided to begin their caste-based survey within the state. Now, if you have been watching political news in India in the past few years, there has been a lot of debate about caste-based survey or caste-based census. Caste-based census. Now, what exactly do you mean by caste-based census? It's very simple to understand. Just as the name suggests, that we should have a census of the entire country on the basis of caste. Ask everyone what exactly is your caste, what exactly is your economic status, so that we have a clear idea of how many people in India belong to which caste, so that in turn we can have policies specially targeted to people on the basis of caste. Why do we need that? For a very simple reason. A lot of policies in India, most specifically the reservation policy in India, is focused on the basis of caste. It is caste-based reservation that is provided in India. So if we have to ensure that we properly give benefits of reservation, benefits of certain schemes, we should know the number of people who are in specific caste in India. That is why we should have that. Central government, however, has denied this idea. Central government said that no, we are not interested in caste-based census. Many other political parties at the state level wanted a caste-based census. Political parties from Bihar especially said that we should have a caste-based census, so they are conducting that within their state. That is why they are calling it a survey and not census. because census takes place in the entire country. Bihar government can only conduct this within their state, so they are calling it a survey, caste-based survey. Now in 2011, we did have the socio-economic and caste census. That was for the first time since 1931 that we had this kind of a survey, where people were asked to tell their caste, specifically their economic situation, etc. Now, why is it so important? Let me give you an example of why is it so important and why is it at the center of debate. In Indian polity, I am very sure all of you would have read about the Mandal Commission, right? I am sure all of you are familiar with the Mandal Commission. You talk about Mandal Commission whenever we talk about the OBC reservation in India, remember? Now, when Mandal Commission was formed, what was the idea of Mandal Commission? The Mandal Commission was given a very, very simple objective. Mandal Commission was told that please tell us how to improve the situation of other backward classes, that is the OBC community in India. As simple as that. Now, Mandal Commission, when they gave the report, did you know what did they say? Mandal Commission said in their report that in entire country of India, 52% people are OBC. This was the Mandal Commission report that came out. Let me repeat again. The Mandal Commission said 52% of India's entire population is OBC, of entire population. And for them, we are suggesting 27% reservation. Now, you also know Mandal Commission was at the center of a lot of debate and controversy. Many people did not like it. Many people said that it is bad. Why? Many people said that how did Mandal Commission decide that 52% of Indians are OBC? We did not have any caste-based census. The last caste-based census was in 1931 at the time of the British. Mandal Commission actually used the census of 1931, and on the basis of that they said 52% of India is OBC. Can you imagine that? A commission using the data which is over 40 years old and saying that based on that we will tell you how much is the OBC population. Almost everyone said that this is wrong. Everyone said that no, 52% is a random number. How can they say 52% of Indians are OBC? We don't have any caste-based census. But because we did not have any caste-based census, that was accepted and the reservation was given. Now, if today we do have exact data of the caste-based numbers, then it will be very easy, or it will be much better to decide how much reservation should be given, who deserves reservation, who doesn't deserve reservation, so on and so forth. That is why the caste-based census becomes so important. If India would not have had caste-based policies, if we would not have had caste-based reservation, then there was no need of such a census. But because we give reservation on the basis of caste, because we run our policies on the basis of caste, that is why it is important to have a caste-based census as per most of the experts. The central government doesn't agree with that for various reasons, but the Bihar government is undertaking that survey. Now, there are pros and cons of having this kind of a survey or this kind of a census. Pros, as we discussed, the policies of the government will be much better targeted. Those people who are against reservation, I'm sure many of you also don't like the idea of reservation, saying that this is bad or this is not justified. So people who are against reservation, they can also get to see how many people in India are actually backward on the basis of caste or not, so that the debate around reservation can become much more informed. Because right now, the problem with the debate of reservation is that no one in India has real updated numbers. Because we don't have real updated numbers, how can you actually have any debate around reservation without facts, without numbers? And that is why caste-based reservation can be a good idea. On the other hand, the caste-based census has certain problems as well. For example, the caste-based census would force a person to reveal his or her caste. Now, it may happen that a person does not want to reveal their caste. It's not necessary. Maybe I don't want people to judge me on the basis of my caste, so I don't want to reveal that. But when you would have a caste-based census, that would mean that you are asking the person specially to tell what is your caste specially and tell that person. We all know even today, especially in the rural areas of India, people are discriminated against on the basis of their caste. And when you actually force the person to reveal their caste, even though they are not comfortable with it, you will have a situation where we will see that these kind of issues of discrimination on the basis of caste may become even more robust, and we should not have that. These are certain pros and cons. At the end, let me just summarize. We are not having caste-based census across the country. The central government is not in favor of that. Certain state governments want that, and that is why we have Bihar government especially from today starting the caste-based survey. If you write about this in the examination, make sure don't use the word census, because census is across the entire country. Because it is happening within one specific state, let's call it a survey. Census would be in the entire country altogether. The next article that I want to discuss from you is a statement made by India's Attorney General. The Attorney General of India has told the Supreme Court that the central government will adhere to the timeline fixed by the Supreme Court for judicial appointments. Now, what exactly is this issue? In the past few months, we have seen the central government and the Supreme Court coming face to face head on the issue of judicial appointments. Many people in the central government, especially the law minister, have made statements that they don't agree with the collegium system. The government, the supporters of the government time and time again have said that the collegium system needs to change, that the government cannot just say yes to every appointment that is made by the collegium. In Indian polity, all of you have read, when it comes to appointing Supreme Court judges and High Court judges, the government of India does not really have any powers. We have something called the collegium system. Collegium system would be the Chief Justice of India, and after Chief Justice of India, 4 senior most judges of the Supreme Court. These 5 people form the collegium. They are the one who advise to the President of India who shall be the next judge in the Supreme Court. And that appointment is to be confirmed by the government. The government does not have any option. The government cannot recommend or cannot change any name. The government has to abide by whatever recommendation is given by the Supreme Court. But what has happened in the past few months is, when the Supreme Court sends any name for the appointment in the Supreme Court, the government usually delays it. Either the government sends back the name saying that no, we don't like this judge, or the government just delays the appointment. Now, the problem with delaying the appointment is very, very critical. Please understand this. In India, we have a specific retirement age for judges. Retirement age for the Supreme Court judges, retirement age for the High Court judges as well. So when a judge is appointed in a delayed manner, that means the seniority of the judge will be affected. Please do understand, this is very, very critical. In the Supreme Court, if a judge will get to become the Chief Justice of India one day or not is decided by the appointment date of that judge. If that judge is appointed with a delay in the Supreme Court, that means that that judge might never get to become the Chief Justice of India. So appointing the judge in a fast, quick manner is in the interest of that judge, and the government delaying it will be very, very harmful for that judge's interest. Now, what has happened in the past few months is the Supreme Court and the High Court judges' appointment. Whenever the collegium sends any name to the government delays it. Supreme Court has not been happy about it. Supreme Court has also said government should not do this because we have a lot of vacancy right now in the High Courts especially. Across the country, if you see, almost every High Court has huge vacancy. Let me give you certain examples. Patna. The Patna High Court has over 60% vacancy, 60, just imagine. Just imagine a court having place for 100 judges in place of which only 40 judges are available. Just imagine that when 60% seats are vacant. Calcutta High Court, 55% seats vacant. Rajasthan High Court, 54% seats vacant. This is such a dramatic situation where on one hand we have crores of cases pending, and on the other hand we have a situation where over half of the positions of the judges are vacant just because the collegium has sent the name but the government has not accepted it. They are delaying it and they are sending it back time and time again. Because the Supreme Court has not been happy about it, government has finally said, okay, we will abide by whatever timeline that you give. We will now ensure that we actually give a go-ahead to the names of these judges in a timely manner. But whether it will happen or not remains to be seen in the future. This is just a promise made by the government. These are the important articles on the Hindu newspaper today that we want to discuss. And let me give you a couple of practice questions here for you. First, setting a fixed timeline for the government to accept the collegium's recommendations takes away the government's sovereignty. Do you agree? Justify. Second, elaborate the implication of conducting a caste-based census at an all-India level. Both these questions have to be answered within 250 words. Also, as I told you yesterday as well, we do have a student-led answer writing portal, the link for which you can get in the description of the video. On that portal, you can try and write answers to these questions. You can see each other's answers as well and give feedback to each other, which is the best possible way for all of you to learn. You can learn from each other's answer writing style, from each other's mistakes as well, and give a good feedback to each other. I'll just again repeat the homework that I gave you. I want you all to make sure that you write in the comment section at least 2 examples of when the International Court of Justice gave an order against the permanent member of the Security Council and it was not taken well, it was not really abided by. Let's see if you can write those examples and you can learn from each other. Thank you so much for coming in for today's session. We'll see each other soon in the next session. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.